welcome to a brand new video. Thank you for coming back, and if you are new here, thank you for stopping by. So we've seen it again and again and again and again all over the news, and sometimes stories don't even get the programming and footage that they are worthy of. And a storyline we've seen all too well, a storyline that we become all too familiar with, a news story that we have seen one too many times. The storyline of the black man or woman getting stopped for a traffic stop and sadly and inevitably not leaving that traffic stop alive, or a black person jogging or being in their own living room and minding their own business and being killed for absolutely no reason. That's what we've seen for years now, and especially recently, a couple of days ago actually, earlier in this month, the tragic and devastating death of Mr. Tyre Nichols. As we've seen the protest, the footage, the body cam footage, the tragic body cam footage of his death. I'd like to say before we start this video, rest in power to Tyre Nichols, and I wish all the best, and I wish all the peace to Mr. Nichols' family going forward. And if you are triggered by the topic of police violence, I would rather you not watch the rest of this video, because there will be clips and photos that might trigger you. But if you are not triggered by these topics, feel free to watch the rest of this video. So let's get right into it. There have been several instances of police violence that have happened over the years, so let's talk about a couple of those. All instances, of course, are extremely important, extremely worthy of being spoken about, but sadly for the topic of time, I can't speak about everything, and it's sad that if I simply spoke on the topic of black people dying at the hands of police wrongfully, the video would be well over an hour long, an hour 30 minutes long, if I simply just told you their names, what happened, and how they died. That's how many people have died over the years. The video will be way too long. The video will be sadly like super long, so can't talk about them all in this video, but we will be highlighting a couple, and I will be reading from my script just so that I get everything correct and that what is being told from the research that I have gathered. George Floyd, who allegedly tried to use a counterfeit $20 bill, he was arrested and had his neck laid on by the knee of police officer Derek Chauvin for a total of 9 minutes. Breonna Taylor, who was sleeping in her own home, her and her boyfriend was sleeping, and 3 plainclothes police officers entered her home. Her and her boyfriend thought that they were intruders, and her boyfriend, who owned a legal firearm, he legally owned the firearm. He shot at the police officers not knowing that they were police officers, and they thought that they were just people trying to burglarize their home. And in the crossfire between them, Breonna Taylor, Miss Taylor, was shot 8 times. Stephen Clark, who was only 22 years old, he was standing in his grandmother's backyard, and the police had said they believed he was holding a gun, but sadly it was just his smartphone, and they shot him more than 20 times. Simply because they thought he had a gun, when that was not the case, and it was far too late for them to take back anything that they had done. Philando Castile, he was pulled over for a simple traffic stop. He had informed the police officer who had pulled him over that he had a legally armed firearm, and seconds later, footage later showed him being shot by the officer. The aftermath of the killing of Mr. Castile was captured on Facebook Live by his then girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, who was in the car along with their 4-year-old daughter. Alton Sterling, for selling CDs and DVDs. 2 police officers confronted him in front of the shop that he was selling in front of, and later he was tased, brought to the ground, and was shot 6 times. All this being caught on footage. Freddie Gray, who was arrested and thrown into the back of a police van, left unattended He was left in the van for 45 minutes and was later found in the back with his spinal cord nearly severed, hands and feet shackled, and without a seatbelt, as he had been thrown and thrashed around in the back of the van during the ride. Eric Garner, who was said to be allegedly selling loose cigarettes, Officer Daniel Pantaleo held Mr. Garner down in a chokehold and didn't release him for 11 minutes, even after Garner pleaded to him for several minutes that he could not breathe. Now, it could go on and on and on and on. There are so many people that we have lost over the years that, of course, deserve to be spoken about. Their names heard and their stories recognized. But it would just be way too long to put into this video. But let's get down to the statistical data about police violence against Black people and just police violence in general. So, according to mappingpoliceviolence.org, Black people are 2.9 times more likely to be killed by police than their white counterparts. According to Washington Post, after they had collected data on police violence, in 2021, the police killed upwards of at least 1,055 people. Once again, going back to mappingviolence.org, they found that there had been 169 days in 2022 where police killed a Black person in the US. Connected to that, police killed 254 Black people in those days in 2022 alone. According to their research as well, police killed 5 more Black people in the U.S. Through November 2022, compared to the same period of time than the previous year in 2021. Now, you may be asking, what even is the definition of police brutality? There's so many different variations. Some people's definitions differ when it comes to excessive force, using unnecessary force. But the definition, word for word, of police brutality is the excessive and unwarranted use of force by law enforcement against an individual or a group. It is an extreme form of police misconduct and is a civil rights violation. So with this definition in mind, what we have seen over the years, what we have seen in Tyre Nichols' tragic body cam footage, this is exactly what's occurring. This is exactly what's happening. George Floyd, there was no need for the force of Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck. There was no need for that. Even if he was selling a counterfeit $20 bill, I don't think anyone else would have died over a counterfeit bill. I don't think anyone in that manner would have died by that way for a counterfeit bill.
So the body cam footage of Tyre Nichols gets released today in Memphis. And ahead of that, they went ahead and closed down school today. And look at what CNN had to report this morning.
Just into CNN, for the first time, we are hearing some audio from Memphis police scanners of the traffic stop involving Tyre Nichols. Now, this is separate from the videos that everyone is waiting for to be released, videos capturing how Tyre Nichols was beaten by police. Those videos have yet to come out. Let's get back to Memphis. Sarah Seidner standing by once again. Sarah, tell us about these police scanner recordings.
Kate, we just have a section of it that we were able to hear. Some of it's inaudible. There does seem to be some distress at some point. But we want to let the audience hear it themselves. As you know, Tyre Nichols was killed. He died on January 10th after being pulled over on the 7th for what police at the time said was reckless driving, and somehow ended up getting beaten. And so we have now heard from the police chief, and we have now heard from the family that beating was absolutely inhumane. 5 police officers have been fired. We are awaiting the potential of charges. We expect to hear from the DA at 2. But what we have now is this dispatch audio, which is between the dispatcher and the police on the ground. I'd like you to listen to a section of it.
We got one male black running. Okay, set up from.
You know, the Scorpion car pull over to East Ranger Road. You have one running on foot.
Run that tag and see what the answer is. Show me battle cake.
He's fighting at this time. Check the
What stands out to me here is you hear what sounds like distress, then you hear the dispatcher, it sounds like saying he's fighting at this time, but you also hear the officer say, run that tag and see what's the address. The question is, did they not run the tag when they first pulled him over, which often officers do, especially if they are coming up onto a car? And so it is a question as to the sequence of things here.
Now that's interesting that the officer said to run the tags. You would presume that after you stop them, you would already be in the process of running the tags before you as the officer get out of the car and start to question the person. But it doesn't seem like that's what they did. So the overarching theme or question is, well, why did they pull him over?
Tyre Nichols, as we've seen as this case and investigation develops, he was not driving recklessly like these police officers were saying. They snatched him out of his car very forcefully, and they tried to say that he was high and he wasn't in his right mind, when you can clearly see that the reason he was out of his right mind was because of how many times they slapped, punched, and kicked him and sprayed him with mace and pepper spray. That's probably the main reason. And we've just seen that through the multiple occurrences of police violence, police brutality against Black people, that this definition is the perfect definition for what's happened and what's happening so far. And I think that we should definitely continue to use this definition. I think this is the best definition to categorize what has been happening. So now let's talk about some next steps. First off, I want to talk about defunding the police. Now, there's been so much talk, especially when George Floyd sadly got killed. There was a lot of talk about defunding the police. And a lot of people either did not want to understand or they just couldn't understand the concept of what defunding the police meant exactly. And in reference to defunding the police, what this means is that people want funding for the police to either lessen or put that money that is being put towards getting more weapons, getting more equipment, towards more training, more health, more mental health screenings, more awareness of the group that these police officers might be patrolling, bias training as well, and just getting really nitty gritty in the training, because a lot of people have noticed that unlike other emergency services, police training is a very short period of time, and just like depending on the circumstances, just about anybody could be a cop, just about anyone. And if you pass the training and those initial screenings, and if we defund the police and we put that money, that trillions and millions of dollars that's being put into these police departments where they don't exactly need to be 100% of the time, we could put it into community funded places for these marginalized groups, for people who need that money that's going towards policing. That could possibly further harm the groups that don't have the facilities that they need to prosper and succeed and thrive in life in these areas that these police officers are patrolling. We don't want to completely cut police officers' pay. We don't want to throw our police officers in jail. We don't want to take all the money out of it. We want to put some of that money to a more useful place, because there's just too much money going into policing. That's what we mean by defunding the police, putting that money to a better place, in better use. Putting more time into police training, as I just said with defunding the police, putting more money in focusing on training, mental health screenings, and putting more money into training, just putting more time into training, not even money, putting more time into it, because police training is a short period of time. And I think if the process was longer, more intensive, more immersive, then I think a lot of things would get resolved if a lot more things were included in training. And that the time that people are being trained was not so short. Because you wouldn't want the paramedic who's also emergency call personnel or a firefighter to have only 6 to 10 weeks of training or knowledge on the topic and come and try and save your house when they don't even know how the fire hose works, or the EMT doesn't even know how to use the defibrillators. You wouldn't want that. You'd want them to be knowledgeable. You'd want them to not have a bias on who they're treating. You don't want them to have any negative thoughts about the people that they will be interacting with, or have any preconceived notions about the people that they are talking to or that they are having a conversation with, or who they will interact with in the future. And this is what I mean. More time into training will mean that biases, being able to prepare yourself for an actual confrontation and actually be able to de-escalate without force. That's a big thing. Being able to de-escalate without force. Because what I've noticed is that there are some videos of police officers that genuinely try to calm down the person, talk calmly, and make sure the situation is de-escalated so that there is no escalation of the situation. But some videos I have seen, just like Tyre Nichols, those men could have pulled him over, asked for license, registration, and could have strained him a bit, brought it back, checked, and he could have been out of there. But no, they used excessive force. They pulled him out of the car when that was not needed. They literally beat him up in the middle of the street when that was not needed. Who needs to get beaten up in the middle of the street in a neighborhood simply because they're recklessly driving? Who? I don't think anyone. There's literally no excuse for what they did. And if police officers got training to be able to successfully de-escalate situations in a way that was conversational and not forceful, I think a lot of things would be more easily resolved if both people were calm. Because the police officer further escalating the situation and allowing the situation to heighten by also exuding anxious physicality or being really loud and making the other person who's already probably very scared more anxious, more scared, more nervous for their own life, that doesn't collide very well, does it? We've seen it multiple times. It does not collide very well. But that talked a lot about on that one. It's constant and consistent training and mental health screenings. This goes with the police training, but is also a separate topic. What I mean by this is basically the training and mental health screenings don't stop after training. There should be multiple times throughout the time you are a police officer that you go to meetings, you take courses, you take lessons, you take classes for bias training, conversational ways to confront people conversationally and to de-escalate, and also make sure that there are consistent and constant mental health screenings every couple of months, maybe even every couple of weeks if you're trying to be just that careful, because sometimes mental health of a person can directly relate to how they interact with other people in the real world, and you never know what someone is going through. And if you allow them to be in a high intensity, high anxiety, high risk environment, and they are not mentally well enough to properly interact with another person, then a lot of things can go wrong. And I think that if we had many different screenings over a period of time of someone being a police officer and multiple training sessions, not just like the training week or like the training period, normal training period of a police officer, I think a lot can be learned and a lot can be done and a lot can be resolved. A lot can be resolved. Now, along with this, more awareness and knowing the importance and acknowledging the importance of police brutality and violence. Because this is just a general thing for everybody, not just police officers. Everyone. Because sometimes people don't like to acknowledge the fact of just how horrible or just how significant or just how frequent these occurrences are. Now, it's been a while since the George Floyd incident, but I bet there has been many instances before Tyre Nichols that just have not been broadcasted the way that Tyre Nichols and George Floyd have been broadcasted, and how Stephen or Breonna Taylor were broadcasted. And I think just knowing the facts, knowing the importance, knowing and acknowledging that this happens, this is going to continue happening, and this is an ongoing and horrible act that just does not stop and no one is making strides to stop it, is extremely concerning. And if we truly acknowledge and make more awareness about it, and we don't just go like, oh, well, this happened, however, hopefully it won't happen again, and we just say hopefully, and we do our prayers and bring prayers to people and go and march, but nothing is done. Nothing is done. No further action is done. Maybe there might be a little bit of justice here and there, but we're not seeing extreme change like people genuinely want to witness. And I think just having the awareness, having the acknowledgement, and having the knowledge about these topics, knowing the history of even where the police came from, even knowing where the police came from could bring so much information to people's minds and bodies. Because if you didn't already know, the police are literally a direct descendant from the runaway slave patrol. Literally the people who used to work on plantations, who would go after and catch runaway slaves. They were slowly turned into today's police force because of how the economy and how America was changing. And simply, of course, they couldn't call them runaway slave patrol, but they still wanted to patrol minority groups, marginalized groups. So they turned that slowly through the history of America into the police. Now, not saying that every police officer has some weird racial bias against black people. Not saying that. I'm just saying that's the history behind it. It is the sad history behind people that are supposed to protect and serve everybody, but they don't seem to be protecting or serving anything or anyone anymore like they used to. But even back in the day, even way back in the day with the LA riots and the man who was arrested and beat up by the police who caused the LA riots, it's been happening forever. Back when Martin Luther King, the police did not care that he was peaceful. They still beat him and everybody up. Had hoses, had dogs, everything. It didn't matter what approach was taken. The police have always been just a bit too forceful. And that's the thing. It's not a new thing that's just happened, that just started happening. We're like, oh my god. It's been around forever. Crooked cops are never gonna go away, I don't think, sadly. There's always gonna be morally unjust people in the world that sadly get these positions of power and think that they can push this newfound power in other people's faces and use it for the wrong thing. But I have talked for almost 30 minutes, and I think that I should stop. So I just think this video has gone on for way too long, and also adding on the photos, videos, and all that different stuff. This video is going to be well over 35 minutes. So just a final note, please do your own research when it comes to this topic, because there can be a lot of misinformation, misretellings of different things that have happened. And educating yourself, knowing the history, recognizing and acknowledging the people who have died because of this is extremely important. And education and educating yourself is a powerful tool to recognizing and acknowledging the injustices of our world. Not even just crooked policing, a lot of things. So power yourself with knowledge and education, and empower others to do the same. I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like, comment what you'd like for me to talk about next. Maybe you have your own thoughts about this topic, and please share this with others if you think other people would appreciate this video. And also, I hope you come back for the next video. I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet, but hopefully something happens and I can get my input on it, or something in this big brain of mine will thunk something up and I'll talk about it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and once again, like, comment, subscribe, share, and comment what you guys would like me to talk about next, or your thoughts on this topic as a whole. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.